Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cracking open some really insightful source material.
Yes, excerpts from Predictably Irrational by Dan O'Reilly.
And right off the bat, this book challenges something pretty fundamental, doesn't it? A belief many of us hold.
It does, that belief that we're rational, that we make decisions based purely on logic, what's best for us.
Right.
O'Reilly's core idea, and it comes through strong in these sources, is that while we like to think that, well, the evidence tells a different story.
We're often irrational. But here's the twist, the really fascinating part. It's not just random.
No, not at all. Our irrationality follows patterns. It's systematic.
And predictable. That's the T word.
Predictable irrationality, exactly. So our mission today is to start unpacking why, to look at some of these hidden forces shaping our choices.
And we're starting with the author's own story and this concept he calls relativity.
That's right. His journey is quite remarkable.
The author, Dan O'Reilly, he starts by sharing something incredibly personal. It seems like it really shaped his whole outlook.
Yeah, he suffered terrible burns from an accident when he was a teenager.
Horrific burns, wasn't it? Like a huge percentage of his body.
Yes, a magnesium flare explosion. Third-degree burns, over 70%.
Oh, yeah.
It meant years of recovery, much of it spent, observing things from the sidelines as an outsider almost.
Wow. That's hard to imagine. And his experience during the treatments, that seems crucial to how he started thinking about these predictable mistakes.
It really is. He talks about the daily bath treatments, removing the bandages, agonizing process.
Right.
And the nurses who were experienced, they cared about him. They had a theory.
Okay.
They believed in the quick removal, rip it off fast,
Yeah.
intense pain, but short. Better than drawing it out slowly, even if the pain level was lower moment to moment.
So their thinking was short and sharp is better than long and less intense, but as the person actually feeling it.
He felt differently. Exactly. And later, his own research actually proved him right.
No way.
Yeah, he found that lower intensity pain, even spread over more time, was actually perceived as less painful overall, completely contrary to what the nurses believed.
Okay, wait. So the people whose whole job involved managing pain, doing this every day, they were systematically getting it wrong based on just a gut feeling about pain. That's quite unsettling.
Yeah, it is unsettling.
Wow.
And that was the light bulb moment for him. If even these dedicated, experienced people could be biased in how they perceive something so basic, like pain, leading to the same mistake over and over.
Then what else are we getting wrong systematically?
Precisely. It kicked off his research into why we humans repeat errors, why we don't always learn the optimal way, even from experience.
And that path led him into behavioral economics.
Right, which is this fascinating field blending psychology and economics. It looks at how people actually behave, not how traditional economics assumes they behave perfectly rationally.
So the big idea isn't just, oh, sometimes we mess up. It's that our mistakes, our irrational choices, aren't random blips.
Not at all. They're systematic, they're patterned, they are, as the title says, predictable.
We keep falling into the same traps. Overpaying, procrastinating, whatever it is. And these patterns can be understood.
And he uses experiments, like the ones we'll discuss, to kind of isolate these forces. Think of them like microscopes.
Okay.
They let us zoom in and see clearly how one specific thing influences our behavior. They show these general principles that, play out everywhere in our lives.
So it's not just about the result of one lab test. It's about understanding the underlying force it reveals.
Correct.
A force that's probably affecting us, affecting you listening right now, maybe without you even noticing.
That's the idea. And that's the invitation here. As we talk through these concepts, think about where you might see them at play in your own life, your own decisions.
Okay, great setup. Let's dive into that first big force then, relativity. What's the core idea?
The fundamental concept is that we humans, we rarely choose things based on their absolute value. We just don't have this built-in meter telling us what something is objectively worth.
So I don't just know intrinsically if a coffee is worth $4.
Pretty much, yeah. Instead, we rely massively on comparisons. We figure things out in context relative to other options that are right there or easy to compare. Our judgments are all relational.
And this brings us to that famous economist subscription example. It seems like a perfect illustration of how relativity works and how it can be used.
Oh, it's a classic. So they showed MIT students 3 options for The Economist.
Okay.
1, internet only, $59. 2, print only, $125. And 3, a print and web bundle, also $125.
Right. So looking at that option 2, the print only for $125 just seems obviously worse than option 3. Same price, but you get less. Why offer it?
And that's the predictable irrationality right there. Early suspected that print-only option wasn't a typo. He called it a decoy.
A decoy.
Its job wasn't to get picked. Its job was to influence the choice between the other two.
Ah, okay. So he tested this with the students. What happened with all three options on the table?
The results were pretty stark. 16% chose internet only for $59. 0%, literally nobody, chose the print-only decoy for $125.
You're right. Makes sense.
And a whopping 84% chose the print and web bundle for $125.
Okay, so far so. Rational, maybe. People picked the best value bundle. But then comes the predictability part. What happened when he took away the decoy? The one nobody chose anyway.
This is where it gets weird. He showed another group just the two options people had actually chosen before.
Yeah.
Internet, only $59, and print and web, $125.
And
The preferences totally flipped.
flipped how?
This time, 68% chose the cheaper, internet-only option for $59.
Whoa.
And only 32% chose the print and web bundle for $125.
Get out. So just having that useless print-only option there, the 1-0 people picked, made the more expensive bundle suddenly seem way more attractive. It boosted its selection rate from 32% to 84%. That's wild.
It made the $125 bundle look like a steal, but only when compared to the clearly inferior print-only option at the same price.
Okay, so why does this happen? What's the mechanism?
The key insight is about comparisons. Our brains love to compare, but we prefer easy comparisons.
Okay.
Comparing internet only, $59 versus print only, $125, is kind of hard. What's the print worth? How do you value that difference?
Right, it's apples and oranges-ish.
Exactly. But comparing print only, $125 versus print and web, $125, that's dead simple. One is obviously better value for the same money.
So the decoy gives you an easy comparison.
Yes, and that easy comparison steers you towards the option that looks clearly better relative to the decoy. Even if, in isolation, you might have preferred the other option, like the cheaper internet-only one.
It's like the decoy shines a spotlight on the target option, making it look great just by being next to something clearly worse but similar.
That's a good way to put it. The source uses this sort of abstract A, B, and A minus idea. A minus is just the slightly worse version of A.
Right.
Introducing A minus makes A look better, not just compared to A minus itself, but it makes A seem more appealing overall when you're facing that harder choice between A and B.
And once you grasp this idea, you suddenly see it everywhere. The source gives tons of examples.
Oh, yeah. Think about buying a TV. Retailers often have 3 models lined up,
The cheap one, the super expensive one.
and the middle one they really want you to buy. The super expensive one often acts as a decoy, making that middle one seem like the reasonable, sensible choice.
Or restaurant menus. That crazy expensive dish way at the top.
Probably a decoy. Makes the second most expensive dish look much more palatable price-wise, boosting its sales.
House hunting, too, you mentioned.
Yeah, the agent shows you 2 similar houses, but one needs a new roof. That's your decoy.
Ah.
Makes the other similar house, the one in good shape, look fantastic.
Yeah.
Then they show you a totally different style house, hard to compare. You latch onto the easy comparison.
It simplifies things, avoids the harder comparison. And there was even that dating experiment with photos.
Yes. Showing a slightly less attractive version of someone like a distorted photo made the original photo seem more attractive compared to other people who were initially rated as equally good-looking.
So relativity even messes with our perception of attraction.
It's fundamental. But the source also points out a pretty significant downside to this constant relative comparison.
Ah, yes. The green-eyed monster. Jealousy and envy.
Exactly. It's why that commandment, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods, is so hard to follow. Our brains are just wired to look next door and compare.
And it can make us really unhappy. The examples in the source are quite telling.
Yeah, the employee earning $300,000 a year, but miserable because colleagues made $310,000. His satisfaction wasn't about the amount, but the comparison.
Or the CEO's salaries going through the roof after they became public knowledge.
Right. The intention was maybe transparency, but the effect was CEOs comparing themselves to other CEOs and demanding more to keep up relatively.
They weren't comparing to, say, average worker pay, but to the CEO down the street.
Precisely. And that story of the physician giving up important research for Wall Street.
Because his academic salary, while good, felt small compared to his finance friends, even though he might have been perfectly happy before making that comparison.
It really highlights how subjective satisfaction can be, like that H.L. Mencken quote.
Oh yeah, about satisfaction depending on earning more than your wife's sister's husband.
Exactly, because that's the immediate relevant comparison point in your social circle.
So satisfaction is this constantly moving target tied to who we compare ourselves against. Can we actually do anything about it? Does the source offer hope?
It suggests we can, maybe, manage our circles of comparison consciously.
Meaning, like, choose who we compare ourselves to. Or maybe just be aware of it. Avoid situations that trigger negative comparisons.
Something like that. Being mindful of the comparisons we make.
Mm.
Focusing maybe on what we can afford rather than what others have.
Okay. The source also mentioned something about narrow versus broad comparisons, using the pen in the suit example.
Right. Saving $7 on a $25 pen feels like a great deal, worth driving across town for 15 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
But saving the same $7 on a $450 suit suddenly feels not worth the same 15 minutes of effort.
Even though $7 is $7 and 15 minutes is 15 minutes.
Rationally, yes, but relativity makes us focus narrowly. We see the saving as a percentage of the item's cost. 28% off the pen feels huge. A tiny fraction off the suit feels negligible. We compare within that specific purchase, not broadly against the value of our time or $7 in general.
Like adding $200 for extras on a $5,000 catering bill feels like nothing, but clipping a 25-cent coupon takes conscious effort.
Or paying $3,000 for upgraded leather seats on a $25,000 car seems less painful than spending $3,000 on a new sofa, even if the sofa provides way more daily value. It's all relative to the main purchase price.
We get stuck in that narrow frame. And that story about James Hong selling his Porsche for a Prius, that felt like a deliberate attempt to break free.
It really did. He realized the Porsche didn't bring lasting happiness because he just started comparing himself to guys with better Porsches who were comparing themselves to Ferrari owners.
An endless cycle.
Totally endless, driven by relativity. Selling the fancy car was his way of saying, I'm stepping off this comparison treadmill, trying to find satisfaction separate from what others have.
It really hammers home that point. The more we have, the more we seem to want, because the goalposts keep shifting based on those around us. Breaking the relativity cycle seems key to contentment.
So if we sort of step back and look at what we've covered from this first part of Predictably Irrational, the huge takeaway is just how powerful this force of relativity is.
Yeah, it's operating under the surface, shaping so many decisions we make, often without us even realizing it.
From tiny purchases to huge life choices, and even how happy we feel day to day.
And recognizing that this isn't just random human weirdness, but a predictable pattern. That seems like the crucial first step. Understanding relativity helps us understand ourselves a bit better.
Absolutely. It helps explain why we choose what we choose, and maybe, just maybe, helps us think about making different choices.
Which leads to a really big question for you, the listener, to think about. Given how deeply ingrained this relative comparison thing is, where is it influencing your life? Are there comparisons you're making that maybe lead to choices that aren't actually best for you in absolute terms? Or comparisons that just make you feel less satisfied than you could be?
And maybe, how could you become more aware of those comparisons? Could you consciously shift your focus, perhaps toward things that bring genuine satisfaction, independent of what someone else has or does?
It's definitely something to chew on, and we've really only just started exploring the ideas in this book.
Oh, absolutely. There are many more layers of predictable irrationality to uncover.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to digging into the next set of concepts from Predictably Irrational in our next deep dive. Should be fascinating.
Agreed. Until then, maybe keep an eye out for those decoys and comparisons in your own world.